Welcome to the Trusted Podcast with your host, Blake Johnson. In each episode, Blake interviews professionals in different areas of life that you need a trusted source of information, including trust and estate planning. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, trustedepa.com. Now, here's the host of Trusted Podcast, Blake Johnson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Trusted Podcast. It's great to be back with you. It has been almost 3.5 year hiatus since the last episode. It was not intentional to do that, and it just happened to be that I had a couple of staff members get sick and a lot of work going on, and so the podcast kind of fell by the way and just took a back seat. And luckily, able to be in a place where we can get this back up and rolling, and so super excited to do that. And just wanted to have an episode of just me kind of explaining some things, talking about what's going to change with the podcast, what we're going to be doing, and how we're going to move forward, and what you guys can expect here in the near future. So if you haven't listened to the podcast before, my name is Blake Johnson. I'm an estate planning attorney, and the goal of the podcast is to interview and educate people about areas, mostly service areas, with professionals, and what kind of things you need to look for or know before you meet with these professionals. And what are the myths, the rumors, things that you need to watch out for, and how you can make sure you find the right professional for you. So that's the goal of the podcast. We're here to educate and to make sure that you know what you're doing when you meet with people. The people that I do meet with are ones that I've either personally used or have gotten very good reviews from other people that I know that have used their services and have known that they actually do good work. They do what they say they're going to do, and they're actually vetted to be the right professionals for that kind of service. So what you're going to do with this podcast is you're going to get to know us, know me, know our firm, know what our practice area is, our attorneys, and then you're also going to get to know the people that we work with, things that interrelate to estate planning and what that all means. So starting off, reintroducing me, like I said, I'm an estate planning attorney, and I've been practicing for 10 years now. It's a crazy thing. When I started the podcast, I was only 5 years of practice, so a lot has changed as far as my understanding and growth, and excited to share some of that with you. I'm the managing attorney of Trusted Estate Planning Attorneys. We're a law firm licensed in 3 different states, Utah, Nevada, and Arizona. And we only do estate planning, so we help people with their end-of-life planning, people who didn't plan and need to help with those transitions. And we have attorneys that can help with that. So we've got 3 attorneys currently looking to grow and expand, and being able to help with all the areas of estate planning. Outside of work, I like to do a lot of crazy things. I do endurance races. So my next one, by the time this podcast is airing, I'll be in the middle of my race. I'm going to go to Hawaii and do a Spartan Ultra, and it should be a lot of fun. It's 31 miles with 60 obstacles, and for some reason I like torturing my body for fun, and it gives me a lot of time to clear my head and think through things. I'm married. I've got 2 boys, and we spend a lot of time together. I coach their sports, and that brings me a lot of joy. I'm a sports enthusiast, love especially college football, so super stoked for that to be starting here in the next couple of weeks. And so that's me. That's what I like to do. And my path to getting here is that I grew up in a family where my dad was an estate planning attorney as well, and so I got to experience my whole life what that kind of looked like. And so grew up around the firm, grew up around the area, and so while I've been practicing for 10 years, I feel like I've really had a lifetime of experiences. The benefit of being a second generation estate planners, I get to see the benefit of what the plans that my dad put in place and how those affected the families down the road. And so it gives me a different perspective because I can see what worked, what didn't work, and how we can change and make that happen. And it's been really fun to see that. So out of law school, I was first an employee for my dad. Tried to go work other places, but once they found out my dad was also an attorney, they pulled their job offers because they figured I'd go back to him eventually. They didn't know he didn't want me to come join his firm. He liked having just a solo shop. But I finally was persuasive enough to get him to hire me, and that's how we got started. We were partners for a good bit in Las Vegas, and then, like I said, he just wanted to have a solo shop and do his own thing, and so he parted ways and did that. And I took over the Vegas office and got to grow it, and that's when we opened our Salt Lake office. And that's right around the time when I started the Trusted Podcast to help explain some of that, help with the growth and the education that comes along with that. And then we had COVID happen, some employees got sick, so the podcast ended, and we actually had a huge increase in growth with from COVID and all the things that went along with that, and which was a great thing. It just was a lot to keep up with, and so now I'm to the point where we have enough staff and attorneys to help assist with all that stuff, so I can get back to doing this podcast. And so, that's how I got here. And I want to talk today about basics of estate planning. I know I've done this podcast before, but I think it's worth reiterating. So, what happens if you have no plan? Well, no plan is still a plan in estate planning, and that's called probate court in the law. The state in which you reside does have a plan for you if you decide not to have a plan, and it's called the state intestacy laws. And each state's slightly different, but for the most part, what that means is if you don't have a plan and you pass away, your assets have to go through probate court to get to the right people. And what that's going to look like is typically it's some variation of spouse and kids get to divide the assets if you have those. If you don't have a spouse or if you don't have kids, then we look at next of kin. So parents, siblings, nieces and nephews, that kind of stuff. That's who's going to be getting your assets. Like I said, you have to go through probate court. Probate court is a long, expensive process. Most states, you're going to look at 6 months to a year, if not longer, to go through that process. And you're generally going to spend 3 to 5% of your net worth on attorney's fees and court costs. So, like I said, very expensive, very time consuming. So the question is, Blake, what do I do? How do I avoid this mess? And this is a big myth that we see all the time. People think, okay, well, I'll do a will. That's going to help me avoid probate court and avoid this mess. Well, the will is great because you can still designate who gets your stuff. It's a great place to designate who's going to take your minor kids. And so you're not leaving it up to what the default is, or with regards to minor kids, anybody can to come and petition and say, yeah, I want to be their guardian. But that will is still something, all it does is guarantee that you go through probate court, because a will is not effective until you die. And it's just basically a letter to the probate court judge that says, hey, judge, when you get this in court, this is what I want to have happen. And so, yeah, you make the decisions, but the court is the one who has to enforce it. So everything has to be done by court order, and you're still going to pay all those fees. It's still going to take 6 months to a year. And so it's not the ideal situation. So once again, Blake, what do? How do I help, avoid this whole mess? Well, the way we do that for most people is a trust. A trust is similar to a business entity because it cannot die and it can still own property. And so you create this document, you list out what you want to have happen when you pass away, who's going to be in charge of it, who's going to get what, any restrictions you want to impose on there, make it age-based, make it certain life events, education, anything like that. And then you make sure you transfer all your assets into this trust, so when you pass away, there's nothing in your name. That's the goal. Because if you pass away with nothing in your name, there's nothing to go through probate court. And then the trust itself dictates who gets what. So it makes for that clean, easy transition because there is nothing to go through court. Trust stuff makes it, this is what I call a revocable trust, so I want to be clear there. Yeah, revocable means you can change it at any time. You can get rid of it or revoke it entirely. And so it gives you a lot of flexibility there. And we can do stuff like, hey, I don't want my kids to get anything until they're 65 because I want them to work their whole life. Great, we can do that with the trust. Hey, I want my kids to be able to get money to start a business or to buy a house. Cool, we can do that with a trust. It just gives you a lot more flexibility in being able to plan what's most important and what you want to pass on. Sometimes you get professionals who get in here and they focus so much on tax savings or how do we pass the most money down and deal with things like that. But that's not necessarily what's the most important thing, and it may miss what's important to you. And so the plan and the question that any estate planning attorney that you're meeting with should ask is, okay, what would you want to have happen? What is most important to you? If you were still here, how would you be giving this money? Is it for education? Great. Well, let's make sure that we make that emphasis in the distribution, that they have to get education, or that we're going to pay for that first and then to incentivize people to go get that education. So that's a key thing I would say when you're looking for an estate planning professional is, are they asking those questions? Are they looking at what is it that's going to be specialized to you, instead of saying, hey, pick one of these three options and that's all you have. That's someone who's more of a trust mill is what we call them. They're just trying to churn out as many as possible. Not so that it's going to be a bad document, but it's not going to be customized to what really works for your family. And as we know, each family is very independent, very different situation, and no one knows that situation better than you do. And so that it takes a partnership between the client and the attorney on how to do that estate planning. We can give ideas, we can give advice. I'm called a counselor, so that means I can direct. But at the end of the day, you're the one who makes the decisions, and you're the one who's got to give up the information for us to give you the right advice. And so make sure you actually are fully transparent with your attorney, help them understand what's going on, what's important, and then they should be reciprocating that and being like, yeah, that's the kind of stuff we want to know. Here's some options. Here's what we've seen work. That doesn't work because X, Y, Z. And then you can really feel like you have a plan going forward that's going to work for what you have. And the other thing I would advise when you're looking for an estate planning attorney to work with is make sure you have someone who is, we can't say specialized in the law industry unless you have a special certification. So there might be people who are specialized, they have a certificate in estate planning. Most attorneys don't take the time to go do it because they already know they're good at it. But what I'll say is you want to find someone who focuses primarily in estate planning, meaning that's what they do day in, day out. They don't do that plus bankruptcy, plus family law, plus in personal injury, plus criminal. They would never have time to be good enough in each of those areas to really give you the guidance and direction you need. So for instance, our firm, we only do estate planning, business formation, and probate. That's it, 3 areas, because that's as much as we can handle and be good at. And those 3 interplay so much that we need to do all 3 to be able to help the clients in their respective areas. So that with making sure they're asking the right questions, and then overcoming that myth of a will is not enough. If someone's saying, an attorney's saying, oh, you just need a will, they probably don't know enough to give you that direction. So hopefully that's a good direction for you. It gives you what you need to find out the basics for estate planning. There's a couple other documents that you do need in your basic estate plan. One of those being a will. Blake, you just told me not to do a will, we need a trust. Well, we still want to have a will because that is our backup plan. It basically says, hey, judge, if I forgot to put anything in my trust and I end up in probate court, what I want you to do, judge, is I want you to put that back in the trust so it's restricted for my kids. It follows that plan. The other thing it does is it helps to expedite that probate process. Most states have a process that's different if it's left to a trust than if it's left to individuals. And so it can expedite and bypass a good chunk of that probate process and save some time and money there too. So that's what that is there for. Next would be a power of attorney. What happens if you become incapacitated? Who can pay your bills? Who can help you with negotiating with the power company, or anything else that you have going on? That's what a power of attorney is in place for. And so making sure you have a couple of people listed that can step in and make those things happen. And then lastly, you have a separate power of attorney, or sometimes called a healthcare directive, for medical needs. Who do you want making medical decisions for you? Who can get access to your medical records? Who's going to be the one at the end of the day that's strong enough to pull the plug if that's what you want? And so you got to consider that. And typically those people are different than who the power of attorney is for financial. People have different skills. And so making sure you give that right direction. So those are the four main documents. You got your trust, your will, power of attorney, and healthcare directive. That's the basics of an estate plan. Highly advise, if you own a home, that you should be talking to an attorney to see if that's the right thing for you. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to, but you should be at least considering it at that point. And so with that, I guess last question I would answer is, what should you do before you go to meet with an attorney? One is, make sure you've talked with the person. If you have a significant other or a spouse, talk with them about these decisions. Who's going to take the kids? Who's going to be in charge of the money? How are you going to break that up? Having that discussion ahead of time definitely helps make the process easier, so you have some sort of idea of what you want to do. The other thing is, you want to make a list of all the assets that you have. Sometimes you forget about stuff, and so make sure you go through all that, list everything out, include things like all the bank accounts, the life insurance, your investment accounts, real estate, your vehicles, anything that's got significant value, gold, even such things as like airline points, or your hotel rewards, that kind of stuff. That's an asset, and so you don't want those to just go away when you pass away, but we got to know about them. So that would be step number 2. And step number 3 is, if you have real estate, it's really helpful to the attorney if you have a copy of your deed from when you purchased that property. Now, a lot of you may not have held on to it. It's typically in your closing packet that they mail you after you purchase your house. It's getting easier for us to find it because most states allow you to search it online to get a copy of it. But if you happen to have a copy that's readily available, bring that to the meeting. It does help the attorneys a ton if you already have that out. So that's my estate planning pitch, what you need to do, who you need to meet with, and we'll get into more detail about each of these subjects as we go along. And I'm excited once again to have the podcast back and to be sharing with everybody about estate planning, but more importantly, the other trusted professionals that you need to work with, and what you can look out for there. So please share this with anyone you think that would be helpful with. Everybody needs to have an estate plan, and so we're happy to help educate as many people as we can with that. And with that, I will see you next week.
You've been listening in to the Trusted Podcast with your host, Blake Johnson. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, trustedepa.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others. Please subscribe to make sure you are notified each time a new episode is released each week.